at this point?
Oh, smoke and screaming and these screaming engines and all the fire engines and police departments are all traveling down that way. Oh my God almighty, the black smoke.
Witnesses say that another commercial airliner has slammed into the Pentagon down in Arlington, Virginia. The U.S. Capitol and the White House have both been evacuated, and we understand that the White House had received a threat of a terrorist attack.
Now we're looking back at the Pentagon again. You can see the smoke.
I remember distinctly September 11th, 2001. It was a beautiful morning. I do remember it being a beautiful morning when I came into work. And I worked in a pretty decent office building over there in Dayton. And I just remember, again, looking out and it was just a fantastic morning. Cool, crisp fall morning. One of my colleagues down the hall had just a real little TV where they were watching the news. And when I came back into the office from court, he said, hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center.
So September 11th, I'll never forget where I was back in 2001. I was a police officer and I was taking a firearms instructor course, and a gentleman ran into the room ran into the range and said that you're never going to believe what happened. Somebody just flew a plane into one of the World Trade Centers.
And that morning I was in the office doing scheduling, and I was there about 6 in the morning in Oklahoma City, so Central Time Zone. And at the time everything happened, it was, because of the time zone difference, I was already at work, and people were coming in, fellow, flight instructors coming in and saying, hey, I just heard this on the radio, and it was kind of disbelief. So we had a huge auditorium for, mass briefings. We went down and turned on the TV, basically, and found out what was happening.
So when 9/11 happened, I was in my early 20s. I was actually working for the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction at the time. I had worked midnight shift, came home, still living with my mother. I was young, and she had woke me up that morning and said, you need to get up. You need to get up, something's happening. And I remember walking to the TV and seeing the second plane hit. And I remember that pause where she looked at me and said, your life will never be the same.
My morning of 9/11 was as a detective in the Clark County Sheriff's Office, and I'd worked there several years before this event took place. But we would have a normal sort of morning briefing, and while we were having that briefing on that particular day, we had a TV in the corner of the office that was on the news channels. And several of us looked up and noticed that there'd been something that happened in the World Trade Center. And at that time, there was speculation that a plane had accidentally crashed into it. And so we were kind of stopped what we were doing at that point and started following the news and turned the volume on. And we kind of commented on, that those buildings are so tall and there's so much air traffic that this is, it's super rare, but it seems odd that it's never happened before. And we at that time did not know it was a major commercial airliner. But as information started coming out, and then unfortunately the other tower was hit, we knew right away that this was an act of terrorism, that's never been found on American soil.
I was in 8th grade algebra class when we had an announcement that we needed to pray for our country because we were under attack. I then walked into homeroom and saw one of the planes hitting the Twin Towers. Since I was only in 8th grade, it didn't really register how bad this was until my dad came to pick me up after school, because he never picked us up just because of his schedule, and they had actually shut down his work because they were one of the locations that were thought to be targeted.
September 11th, 2001, I was actually working here in this building. At that time, I was a criminalist for the Highway Patrol Crime Lab, working seized drug cases. So the morning of September 11th, we were sitting at our workbenches. We were listening to the radio. We listened to Howard Stern show back then when it was out on radio, and significance of that is because it's based out of New York. When the first plane hit, it almost immediately they started actually talking about what was going on there. And at that time, it was like, oh wow, a plane hit the World Trade Center. I wonder what happened. And then we actually went into one of our other analysts, Jeff Turnow. He had a small TV on it, like a boombox, And so we actually went in there and we kind of turned on the news coverage for it. And we were actually watching the news coverage when the second plane hit the tower.
9/11/2001, I was a sergeant, the day shift sergeant at the Delaware post of the Highway Patrol. We just recently moved back into our facility after a major renovation, and we're kind of all in there that morning. And the post secretary said, did you guys hear a plane just hit one of the World Trade Center towers? And so, like most people, we assumed it was an accident, somebody gotten lost in the fog or something like that. Within a few minutes, she informed us that the second plane had hit the second tower. So immediately we turned on the television and we started kind of watching the initial coverage. Almost immediately, though, we got called out. They wanted us out on the road. They wanted us out doing things. I actually ended up with another officer going up on Interstate 71 to meet the governor's chief of staff, who had been in Cleveland and now was returning back to Columbus to be back and help guide the efforts here in the state of Ohio. And they wanted help getting them back through traffic and stuff like that.
9/11/2001, I was at home sleeping after working third shift, was woke up by my stepbrother, wondering if I knew what was going on. I did not. I turned on the news. At the time, I was in the delayed entry program for the United States Marine Corps. Had some unusual feelings that morning, not some uncertainty on whether what was going to go on. Was supposed to leave for boot camp on September 28th of 2001 and ended up having to take a bus to get to boot camp because we could not get any flights.
Every day with my job, just with DIA, I was working with military personnel, those who are serving our country, and it was very rewarding. And then I got the opportunity to work with personnel out of the Army through one of my other jobs, and then finally just ending up here at ONIC and with DPS and now serving just Ohioans is just, again, a great reward. And I don't know that this trajectory would have been where I was at without 9/11 and really just experiencing things as I was growing up.
And it was this sea of green. Like I said, you could walk across the U.S. on all the number of aircraft airborne to where it was just throughout the day, less and less and less, to where, and then I flew again the next day too, where the only people airborne were U.S. Air Force, period. And never having seen that in the U.S. before, sorry. It was just, it's an experience you can't imagine, because you realize the severity of the unknown. You know, it's just like being in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the different places around the world where that's what you do and you're in a battle zone, and having seen that in the U.S. was just unimaginable.
My sort of personal story is my father was in Washington, D.C. that day, and he was flying back on that day. So I had great concern that he was somehow caught up in this, and we were unable to contact him for a period of time. And so that fear and that sort of terror was personal to me. Fortunately for my family, my father was fine. His flight got diverted, but he was not a part of any of this terrible situation, and he's alive and well today as a result. I think everybody lived their life a little differently after that, and you know, it's very compounding of an issue that lives with me today. That you know, you're always in fear of what's the next attack, and how can we prevent it? That's how we think about it here at DPS, is through Homeland Security and all the different intelligence groups that we have here. We're thinking about what could be at most vulnerable, and how can we prevent those things from happening. So I am proud to say many years after this terrible event that there's now new infrastructure that supports preventing these measures, and you know, those folks work every day to do that great work. So
we don't want to forget what happened. We can kind of forgive, but never forget it. Never get back to that sense of complacency that we've had as a country.
Fortunately, Nothing happened here in Ohio when that occurred, but obviously the next day, the newspaper came out with 9/11 Day Terror. So this is my paper from the Columbus Dispatch. I kept the whole front section because the full front section it's amazing. It still amazes me to this day how much information was already known about what had happened less than 24 hours after the attack occurred. It just fascinates me. I think what 9/11 really changed overall was just like information sharing, being ready for if a major incident like that occurred. Because like I said, going up to that was something that we never considered. Wow, how would we respond if we had a building collapse where we had to assist with evidence collection? That's just not something that we considered at the time. We obviously had to after that because you just didn't know what would happen. And then I've seen the changes in the patrol throughout that time too. The different types of equipment we've gotten, the different sections that have been created in order to do intelligence, such as the stack, the hub, ONIC, all of that. I mean, really, all of that really sprung from 9/11.
Then in the fall of 2001, I had the opportunity to go to New York City to work with the New York City's peer support team called PAPA, Police Officers Providing Peer Assistance. And they were asking peer support teams from across the state of Ohio to come assist them. They'd pretty much worn out their folks in the immediate aftermath. And I was part of the North Central Ohio Critical Incident Stress Management Team, had been since about 1992, with never really having been deployed or having done anything. So the morning after Thanksgiving 2001, we got in a car and we got in actually a Delaware County Sheriff's Cruiser, and we drove to New York City. And they put us up at the YMCA at 63rd and Central Park West. And it was absolutely as nasty and disgusting as you would expect a YMCA in New York City to be. But that's where they had the rescue crews, they had the cadaver dog crews, pretty much anybody that was working up there. That was one of the places they could house us. Being able to go and work at World Trade and do those debriefings with those officers, having one-on-one conversations in the hallway. Myself and Deputy Max Griffith from the Delaware County Sheriff's Department, in the evening hours, we would just go down and we would talk to officers and firefighters that were working security and stuff down there. I think it really drove home to me the importance of having that. It was probably also the catalyst for when we got back in the spring of 2002, the Ohio State Highway Patrol created the Members Assistance Team. And the idea was we needed to do something in the area of peer support for our personnel, was something that the patrol had not had before. And then I think it was probably Captain Tieford in the Office of Personnel decided we needed to put a program together. I know that Lieutenant Colonel Lennick was part of putting that initial program together and had the support of the superintendent's office. But we started to put together a team of sergeants and troopers and dispatchers and civilians for the first time in the Highway Patrol's history to take care of our own in the aftermath of some of the things that we see. And I believe 9/11 was probably the catalyst for getting them to create that team.
So one of the things I think that 9/11 taught us is to take care of people. And in the 20th anniversary of 9/11, Colonel Richard Fambrough was the superintendent of the Highway Patrol. And he had a call to action for public affairs and said, I want you to come up with something that honors the people of 9/11, that honors the fallen of 9/11, that honors the first responders of 9/11, and the people that their life trajectory changed, the people that were in the service, or anyone that was down in New York that day, anyone that responded across the globe that day. So one of the things that he worked on was the creation of VMAT, the Veterans Members Assistance Team. And what he wanted was that he wanted in a way for our MAT team, our Members Assistance Team, to tailor their approach also to veterans, people that have served in combat, people that have served at 9/11 at Ground Zero, people that had served in different capacities, because as state troopers, we're on the road and we experience different things. My experience as a combat veteran has been uniquely different than maybe others that have been on the road as a police officer, or others that are different as a dispatcher or support personnel, or different things have happened to different people. But I thought it was really interesting how he tailored the VMAT team to ensure that veterans were taken care of.
One of the things that 9/11 has shown me, probably as a professional, since I've been in public safety and since I've served in a public safety role, is how vulnerable we can be if we're not vigilant. Man, we always have to be on alert. The people we serve depend upon us to be on alert, to be proactive, to be vigilant. We can't ever turn a blind eye to something that needs to be addressed because, again, lives depend on it.
I think it's important to try not to go back to September 10th, of just, thinking nothing big is going to happen. If something does happen, somebody else is going to figure it out. We have to be prepared to do what we have to do to protect ourselves, protect our loved ones, protect the people that we're sworn to protect. So it's important to remember that day and to never forget, like they say, never forget.